start, I'd like to welcome Friedrich Kirschner, who's doing a presentation about real-time animations in a theatrical context, I think that's the title, and he'll show you something with Kinect, I guess.
Awesome.
Some other animated stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, have fun. Good night.
Thank you very much for coming. This is like super awesome for me to be here because I always wanted to be at a proper demo scene party, and I've only been to one in the United States, which didn't really count. Sorry? Huh? Oh, it was nice. You know, it's not the same. I feel kind of weird sitting down. Yes, and I want to tell you a little bit about the work that I'm doing and the approach to computer graphics and theater settings that we're implementing where I'm working. And I also have like a shit ton of questions. So first I'm going to give you some context of what I'm doing and how I'm doing stuff, and then I have like a bajillion questions. And if you're interested in answering some of them, I would be the happiest person in my life today. I'm a professor of puppetry and digital media at the School of Performing Arts Ernst Busch in Berlin, which is a very old theater school, one of the more well-known ones in Germany, and they had this professorship, and I applied, and I kind of got in there. And the weird thing about working with artists and code in general, some of you might know, that's not always going well together, but working with theater actors and code is like working with sharks without a cage. It's very strange. There's like, people don't like computers. Like we have people that struggle writing emails. We have people that the moment they see a computer, they fall asleep. Like they really don't like working with computers at all whatsoever. And also theater people, when you tell them about real-time computer graphics and sensors, they're like, oh, you're doing elaborate video. And it's very hard to try to tell them, these are the people that give you or don't give you money. And so it's very hard to try and explain to them what you can do with like projections and sensors like the Kinect and very simple things also. And so it's been a bit of a struggle, a very interesting struggle. I've come to work with a lot of very fun people, although some of them are kind of weird. And it's basically working with puppeteers. And the nice thing about puppeteers is they're really good at moving things and generating emotion through movement. And this is, I think, something where we come together quite nicely, because movement and space and architecture in space and the way that you move that stuff around is super important for them, and it is super important for me, and that's kind of where we sit down and have beer and start talking about stuff. So a little bit about my background. I used to work with video games, so this is the game that I worked most with. It's Unreal Tournament 2004. I'm sure some of you may or may not have played way too much of this. And I started using the editing environments to change it around. So this is, I was using Fraps at the time. This is a render. This is running in real time in Unreal Tournament 2004, and I've changed some of the textures. I've rewritten some code so that I would use a billboarded approach to character movement. So I would film people from the front and from the side, and then just like in Doom or Wolfenstein, I would just flip out billboards. Some of you, it's really nice to talk in this way because you kind of know what I'm talking about. And I don't have to explain what a billboard is. And then I was starting to experiment with flocking behavior and starting to do like, you know, flocking stuff where people are running against a crowd of people, and to see how that all plays out. And it was super fun. And the nicest thing was obviously that I was able to see all of this stuff whenever I wanted, and I could set cameras and stuff. But I very soon realized that the problem with Unreal Tournament is that it's a game first and a software tool to create animated movies like 1500th. So there's like all this stuff that you have to get rid of, all this code that you have to like rip out so that you can do whatever it is that you want. And you hit the limits of what they can do. This is all without shaders, like it didn't have a shader pipeline and all that sort of stuff. So it was kind of tough work, but I stuck with it for a while. And I started, and I wanted to work with people that I know and like. And so the biggest problem that most of the people that I know and like have is that they do not like computers. They're kind of okay with me, but computers not so much. And so I started to develop interfaces so I could work with this person that I knew. She's a director of photography. And I wanted to really work with her in making movies, and so I started creating this, like this is made out of Lego and just using a device that is called the Game Track device. It's basically like 2 joysticks, but you can pull a wire out. And I hooked it up using a UDP protocol to Unreal Tournament so that you could move something in real space, and the camera in the virtual space would move the same way. And so I would invite her over and be like, hey, would you want to make a movie with me? She was like, no. But anyway, but it was a step, right? And the other thing is I'm really horrible at drawing. And I feel like my main motivation doing all of this computer stuff is because I'm kind of crippled in that area. And so I started to come up with ways of bringing things that other people have designed into the computer. And so this is a robot miniature that I really like. And I started making a little scanner using a Tupperware bowl and some Lego. Again, Lego is a pretty cool thing to work with. And a webcam, which is up here. And this was just quickly put together in C#. And basically what you're doing is you're putting milk in the Tupperware bowl. And then you can run very simple computer vision code that's just checking not even chroma, just the luma, just the, what is it called, brightness of the object. And if it's very bright, it's probably milk, and otherwise it's probably the robot. And so you can bring in more and more milk, and you get slices and layers. And again, unfortunately, I had to use UDP to send every single pixel and make like a little cube and extend the cube depending on the size of the height map. And so this was like very early stuff. But what was really nice is that I started working more and more outside of the computer, outside of mouse and keyboard and outside of coding environments. Yeah.
When was that around about?
This was around 2005, 2004, 2005.
Before?
Oh, that was also around 2000. 2005 was like a crazy year. I did like, yeah. Not everything is from 2005, but like this, 2005 was good fun. I worked at the Ars Electronica Future Lab during that time, and you always had like a whole bunch of work to do in summer, and then like nothing. Which was nice, except you also don't get paid. So yeah, that was that. And so I started developing this a little bit more, and we were actually using it for a theater piece in Norway, where we had a month to make 2 months. To make a 60-minute theater performance with all 3D animated backgrounds and 5 3D animated characters, and we had 5,000 euros, which is nothing. And so the only way this would work is that we would go into a comic store and we would buy all of these Lost figurines. You know the series Lost? Yeah, they have these really nice figurines, and so we would buy them, we would cut them up, and then scan them, and then put them back together, and it would take like a day, and we had 5 characters. They were really nicely designed, not by us, but by the people that made them. So that was like a way of actually getting into the computer, but also really working with your hands and with your paws. But it was still kind of tough because I found myself mostly still working in code. There were some experiments with Arduino. This was a later thing where we started to use stuffed animals and started to get there. We used bend sensors. I'm going to show that later on too. I have a sock here that has a bend sensor in it, and you can also try it out. But mostly it was still coding and getting around. And I was really interested in trying to put together a framework where you have a renderer and you can plug in like physical things into the renderer. And all you have to do is like say, this physical thing should do that. Like this joystick should move things around. That was kind of what I wanted. And then I could work in the real world and stuff would happen in the virtual world, and that would be awesome. So I started working on this tool called Movie Sandbox, and this, I'm actually not going to say this in stereo. And so this was, during that time, this was in 2009, I was in Boston because my wife was studying at the MIT Media Lab, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and I started to create this little demo video to do a Kickstarter. Do people know what Kickstarter is? It's where you ask, perfect. And so this is all running in real time inside the tool. This was just after the Kinect came out, so you were watching like a Kinect point cloud, and you can draw things here. It's not a particularly amazing video. And it has like lights and shadows and stuff. And I'm going to skip around a little bit. And it has some basic animation, and I developed some IK so that you can use procedural walk animations with that yellow guy, and you can see how amazing it is because it's totally clipping to the floor. And the idea was kind of, so my background is, when I was like 18, I thought I would be an amazing film director, which really I'm not. And I started to make all of these short videos. And so I really wanted to make this video like a one-shot, where you see all of this stuff, but then you also get transported back into the real world. So this guy reacts, and you'll see that in a second, to joystick input, and you can wire that all up together. And he's also moving his lips when I move my mouth. And now the camera should zoom out a little bit, and then you will see all of the other small programs that run this thing. Hopefully. Here you go, yes. So there's like all of these different programs. Some of these are written in C#, some of these are written in processing, some of these are written in open frameworks. And the idea was to have this one main renderer that is like kind of complicated to program, and I'm not the best programmer, so it's also kind of messy code. But then you could write all of these like really simple programs, like this is just analyzing audio input and taking that and sending it as a UDP value. And then all you do is say the Y coordinate of this thing should correspond to that. And there's an animation timeline here, and you say when I press a joystick button, C# is really easy for joystick input. And then you say when I press this joystick button, this animation should trigger. And so it should be like you write small things, and you bring them all together into this bigger, like complicated mess of stuff. And then you can obviously also use the milk scanner to do all of this sort of stuff. And so this Kickstarter went well, which was really nice, because I got the, this is the patch that runs it all. I can show you later. Because I got the possibility to work on this program for a while, and started to experiment with shaders, which is very nice. So this is now C++ and OpenGL and open source and all that sort of stuff. And so I'm not bound by like game engine software anymore. I can actually do whatever it is that I want. And I mean, for me, this is like playing a game, like sitting at home and just trying to fuck around with shaders and see what's happening. Yes? It's all particle-based. So this is one of the amazing, insane questions that I have later on, because I'm super scared that I made a huge mistake. And these are all particles. These are all like point sprites. Not even sprites. These are just points. This is GL point. And then the nice thing is that when you do a anti-aliasing, the points become round. Magic. But NVIDIA fucked up the drivers, so you can't make huge points anymore. It's horrible. It's so sad. I would have never thought that like 3 years ago things would have looked better than now. But anyway, so the moment you start to decide that this would be a great way, somebody else fucks it up. So this is points, and I can demonstrate. I will demonstrate later how.
Let me ask you
Yes.
a question. It makes sense to me to use points because you're using the Connect data.
Yes.
Because they transfer it as points.
Yes, but to some extent. I started using points just because I wanted to draw, and I was like, graphics cards are like crazy fast, so why don't we just draw and be cool? Also, I really like 640 by 480. I don't think anybody needs anything more ever. So yeah. So these are just like, this is just playing around. This is literally like just writing shader code and compiling and sending it over in. And we can talk about the rendering pipeline, and I would love to talk about the rendering pipeline. This is what it looks like right now. It has like lights and stuff, and that movement over there is also shader based, and it's shitty written, and it has depth of field and stuff. And I'm going to show you this in a second, like live, and you can see how stuff works. But this is just to show you like what the basic idea is, and how things are looking, and how things should work. So that was fun, but the biggest problem was that what I wanted to do was not sit here all the time in a room that is way too hot with the window open and not be outside and get drunk with my friends. Instead, that is actually pretty much what I was doing a lot of the time, like for years and years. And you have to be, with code, I mean, you all know, but you have to be like super patient. Stuff doesn't compile. The new code blocks comes out. I don't know if anybody of you uses code blocks, and the compiler breaks all the code that was working before. And the computers are supposed to help you. They're not supposed to generate shit that you don't want to deal with. It is horrible, really horrible. And also the strangest thing is that your humor goes totally down the drain. Like you'll find things funny and people will just be like, what the fuck have you just said? Like, this is super funny. I could laugh about this like for a while, but I've seen it a while now, so yeah, this is math. Math kind of rocks. Anyway, so I started, the other nice thing about this sort of performance, like this was a live performance for a festival that was happening in Pittsburgh, and I was at home in Berlin on my desk. And so through Skype, we were able to do like a live conference call. And I was this character whose name is Bob Block. And I was giving a machinima showcase. So I was showing like some random video game videos. And the really nice thing about it is that I was giving it in the virtual world also. So it's nice because you're not standing there as a regular person. You have to do like your song and dance. But you're actually, from within the medium, you're commenting on the medium itself. And it's super, super fun and super, super hard. This was one of the first times where I realized they don't really know it's live. Like, they'll know it's live because you tell them, but in the back of their heads, they'll be like, I don't know if this is just really elaborately, made. And when you start thinking about it, you ask them if they're cool, and they'll be like, hey, and then you're like, okay, that's nice. That could be a video. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Anyway. And so I started getting more out of the computer and more into stuff like bathtubs. Getting into bathtubs every once in a while is a nice thing anyway. But I thought it could be augmented, or it could be made more fun. So this is one of the first experiments that we like really did with the Kinect, where we're using bath foam, and we get the height of the bath foam, and so we're projecting different colors depending on how high the bath foam is. And I had a really shitty projector and not a very good camera either. But the thing is that it's quite a lot of fun. But it's nice. This would be an amazing programming interface. I mean, imagine you would sit in a bathtub and you would write code on that stuff. How fun. Yeah. And compile errors would give you like, you could do all sorts of funny things. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you about one book which was really nice for me to find and read and be really inspired by. Oh no, sorry, not this one book. First, I'm going to talk about one of the biggest problems that I'm having when I try to talk about these sorts of things and try to come up with new ways of staging performances, because all of this digital stuff is amazing, but it is not high culture. Because all of the high culture people are really old, and they just love reading books, and they hate like everything that is technological, and they love Adorno. Like, they really love Adorno. And so I really don't like Adorno anymore. And so this is one of the things that I experience a lot in my time, and not just from faculty, not just from my colleagues, but from students. There's like these 20-year-olds, and they come and you're like, hey, have you played a video game? They're like, no, I do not play games. I do not have the time. I'm more interested in theater and opera. And it's like, what the fuck, man? It's very strange. So they have all of these, yeah, like seriously, like I made a joke out of, we just had a round of applications coming in, and so we talked to each one of them. And I just tried to make a joke out of asking them what the last video game was that they played. And all the faculty was like rolling their eyes, and they were rolling their, they're like, really? Are you seriously asking me that question? It's like, what? It's strange. So I'm trying to approach this sort of thing from a very different angle that is more performative, right? Like more fun and more games. And hopefully people are not really going to die. So what we were trying to do, this was one, you will like this music. This was during a workshop with like artsy people in Singapore. And we were recreating a red versus blue red versus blue general video game tropes. So we did team deathmatch. This is team deathmatch. You know what happens when you put Mentos in Coca-Cola, right? Like it just goes boom. So everybody had one shot. We had two teams. We bought a whole bunch of very cheap rain jackets. We had two teams, and we were just yelling, and it was super fun. There was little replayability because you only have one shot. But then we started iterating on the idea, and we started coming up with more fun ideas to make. One of the things that we did was Joust. Do Do you know the N64 game, Joust? So we didn't have flying ostriches, unfortunately. We did like horses. But the idea was that you have to shake and do stuff as long as one person is falling down, and then you're the winner. And then the final thing that we did was create Pac-Man, where Pac-Man is actually picking up Mentos, and the big Pac-Man things are Coca-Cola light bottles. And so if he has a bunch of Mentos, these are the ghosts. We did some quick game design iterations to figure out that this is how they have to walk, otherwise they're too fast. And you'll see Pac-Man in a second, yes? And so Pac-Man can spray the ghost, which is very unpleasant, so the ghost will go back. And the nice thing is also that Pac-Man can only spray once using the bottle. And this was actually quite fun to play once or twice. Yeah, there was some misjudging in the AI routine of the ghosts. We didn't spend too much time with that. And so this was nice because it didn't involve, it involved computers, it involved knowledge of computers, it involved cultural knowledge of what are video games and how do they work. But it didn't involve programming or any technical stuff. And people were much more interested in then turning this into something that more people can enjoy. Yeah, so that was our task force. And then I kept going at this, and this is, I'm going to show you a video of this. This is a video game. So I went to teach at a school in Austria that is FH Hagenberg. They're doing software engineering, game design, lots of amazing stuff. So they're really good at technical stuff. The art people are really horrible at technical stuff, but they're kind of crazy in their ideas. These people are really good at technical stuff, but they want to make like Doom 5, a lot of them. Not everybody, but like the basic idea is that I want to do the next StarCraft. I want to do the next whatever. And they're actually really nice people, but most of the projects, they don't have the possibility to actually go outside their comfort zone and just try something completely insane. And so the basic rule of the course was we design a video game that does not allow for programming at all. All you can do is have webcams and VLC media player. That's the only thing. And so we designed two games. One was actually Splinter Cell type of thing, where people were puppeteering. We had shit tons of webcams, and people were puppeteering these webcams in this setting. And then you had a guard, which is the guy over here, and a guy who has to steal stuff. And so they have big headphones over, so they can't hear what the other people are saying, and they shout out commands. We had like super amazing voice recognition. They shout out commands, and the people are walking, and so the guard can see two surveillance cameras and his two guards walking around, and the other guy can hack into one surveillance camera. And so there's numbers on the walls and on the doors, and so he has to say where the guard should go, and the other guy is basically telling the robber where he should go. And this was surprisingly fun to play. This was actually really nice. It was also because there was dubstep on the headphones. But it was actually really nice and fun to play. And the other thing that was funny was it was also nice to watch. It was super fun to watch people like with a webcam and with a cable and go like this. And there was something happening in between that I know this is like a video game, but I can also see exactly how it works. And I can see the mechanics and I can see how things go. And so this was the other video game that was more of a shooter type of thing, where they built an elaborate set and then used like a little miniature. And you could stand in front of a projector, and we had like the new Kinect. And so these people would watch the person in front of the projector, and she had a little laser pointer, and she could shoot on characters that would pop up in the set. You can see this over here. And we had like extra stuff like grenades. They even had lighting effects for the grenades. Like the moment a grenade is thrown, things go brighter over here. There were sound effects. I was trying to get them to be like, but they didn't want that. They kind of wanted to play that. They even had, if you did a double kill, they had little things that came down. Yes, double kill. And they even put little ketchup, little plastic bags of ketchup behind the heads of characters and had little needles and tried to kill them. It was very funny. Yes, this is a grenade, in case you didn't know. And then there was level 2 where the camera, and so on. And it was super fun, and it was super fun to play, and it was super fun to watch. And this was really interesting for me in terms of theater, because in theater, there's a lot of people watching. And so this could be something, I thought, that could translate into Thank you so much. This is super fun. You should try that sometime. It's like the most fun ever. Yeah, but now let's get serious. So there's this one book that I wanted to talk about before I went on this crazy rant. I don't know why. Which is called The Practiced Digital Hand from Malcolm McCullough or something. And it's about tools and about how when you use tools, there's not just your knowledge of something, but it's also your motor skill. And he calls it tacit knowledge. There's something that your body knows when you work with clay or when you work with, I don't know, wood or metal. And so he's asking this question, like, how can we make digital tools that infers the same knowledge in our hands? So when you're coding, it's basically knowledge. And you can tell somebody else how to code, and you can teach them how to code. But then I also think that in coding, there is this stuff where you know stuff, and you have an intuition about stuff, and you just start writing stuff down that will work, and you know that it will work. And somebody who just reads a book will not be able to do that sort of stuff. And so there's this in-between thing, but it very much happens with motor and physical stuff. And so a lot of the research that I'm doing, just before I went to Berlin, I'm only there for a year now. Before I went to Berlin, I was at Georgia Tech, and we were doing work on performance and tools. And so we started creating this set of tools. Look at this guy. He's the most fun thing in the whole video. So we used a Kinect to basically produce a point cloud. We bought a whole bunch of Playmobil, and then we used a Kinect to create a point cloud in this movie Sandbox environment, so you can dress up your set. And then this is just putting together a whole bunch of stuff that other people have done also. We've not done anything new. We've not written insane software, but we've put things together that other people have just made one thing in. And I think putting these things together will create something very different to all the stuff that you can do with just one idea. And so you have real-time set design, and then obviously you have real-time character control. And both of these work at the same time. So if you work with puppeteers and they don't like computers, you can just give them a table and be like, hey, do some puppetry over here. And they won't even know that it's in the computer. And then we did this other thing about cameras where you can move the camera around using just your finger. This is actually some original code that we've done. So, and the system knows if your finger is extended or not. And when it's extended, it's actually tracking in 5 degrees of freedom. We didn't have time to do the 6th degree. So you can go up and down and left and right, and then also move around. And then you can just pull your finger back in, and it'll just leave the camera where your last known position was. And this is all like super, super simple stuff. Like all of these programs, all of these small programs, everybody can understand when they read the code. The big renderer stuff, that is kind of more complicated. But the small programs and the way it pipes into each other is all like very, very simple stuff. And so I feel like this is not it. This is not at the point where you will actually generate motor skills and become really good at moving a camera around with your finger. But I think like this is a very interesting area. I think that is what I want to say. Where it's in between like this virtual world and the real world, and there's stuff happening, and I feel like that is very exciting for a lot of people. And the last thing is we were trying out interfaces. And so a whole bunch of this stuff was like research in interfaces that were digital, and now we were trying to do research in interfaces that are not digital. Again, we're just using a camera and a projector. This game was called Hug the Teddy. So you have one teddy bear that is just going, and you have a Wii balance board down here, and somebody who is just pushing either to the right or the left, and then the balance board will translate that into code that will make the characters move the teddy bear left and right. And then we had a traditional joystick. And the nice thing about the traditional joystick is that we could implement, because it's not quite a traditional joystick, we could implement extra functionality. And the idea was you move the teddy around, and then the other teddies are coming towards you. And at the right moment in time, you have to make a hug gesture, which is like pressing a button. And then you would accumulate points and stuff like that. And again, it was just a lot of fun to work with that sort of stuff. And again, it was super fun not just to play it, but to watch how everything works and how everything doesn't work. So you don't get buffer overflows in this sort of stuff. Like your stuff doesn't crash. It's really nice. Like people will improvise. When stuff doesn't work, they will just come up with something, and it'll be super fun. And so it would be nice, and you have this sort of improvisational stuff in the real world. Like, we're really good at improvising. When something breaks down, it doesn't change the setting when you improvise. In code, as you will probably see later on, it terribly changes the setting when you have to switch to your compiler and recompile. And so this is where I feel stuff really works. And so here we were trying at a very conservative institution, which is the Concert Hall of Berlin. We were tasked to produce an opera that was using Shostakovich opera and students from fourth year, from our final year. And this is some of the demos that I'm going to show you afterwards too. This was the stage, and we had a full orchestra playing for us. And the idea was the opera was music for an animated movie, and all the film rolls of the animated movie got lost during a fire. And so there was only this one film segment that they could play. And so they were playing the music, and we were supposed to do something. And the idea was to do as if we would create the animated movie live on stage while everything was happening. That was the basic idea. And so we had illustrator, and she was drawing most of our backgrounds, and then we started to devise interactions that would be digital, but that would be work live on stage. And when we started with these interactions, we quickly noticed that it's really hard to make people understand where the connections are, because there could be a guy behind a curtain in a land called Oz and press some buttons. And oftentimes, that is much easier than anything that you would do in code and sensors. And so one of the things that we figured out that is really important is being imprecise. Like, make tools where you can be imprecise, where you can be not perfect, and then make that as obvious as possible. And people will then notice that, oh, nobody would do that. And then they realize that it's actually live, and do things like this with like socks and whatever sorts of stuff. Okay, yeah, so let's switch. So this is the first scene. Actually, it's a whole bunch of scenes built into one in this software called Movie Sandbox. And it is using the Kinect. So what you see here, this is the Kinect depth image. I'm sure most of you know how this works. And then we're using open frameworks and OpenCV, Open Computer Vision Library, to track objects. And then what we're doing is we get the location of the object, so we cut off the image at a certain level to make sure that we only get like the top parts of the wooden blocks and some stupid stuff that hopefully will not interfere too much. And then I'm just sending the x and y coordinates of these things over to the renderer, in this case, Movie Sandbox. And so what happens is that the moment I press space, I will get a blob, and I will get the x and y position of the blob. And then when I press space again, I will get another blob, and another blob, and another blob, and another blob. Like, this is like very simple stuff. And then, if you're careful, you can actually move the blobs around because it kind of keeps track of this stuff. And so with this, you can be like, hey, could you move it more to the left? Sure, and then you move it more to the left. And this is where people realize, oh, okay, there's a connection between the blocks and the stuff that is going on the screen. You could make this way more elaborate, and it's actually not very stable. Like, if I would move around from up here, you can see how it is actually losing the connection because there's never enough time in theater. And so I had to actually make sure that I'm using the easiest algorithm that you could do to store these sorts of pointers. So this is one example. Then there's another example that I want to show you, which is the fish. And unfortunately, I only have one sock with me because I had to use the other one this morning. This is actually this is like a small theater set for 2 people. And I'm running a processing sketch in here that is using an Arduino, like so. And a very simple, this is just a piece of wire and a sock, and there's this sensor, which is 10 euros, or you can make it yourself. And you can actually then start talking as if you would be a fish, which is fun, but it's not, the fish is not alive yet because it's not moving. So one of the things that we learn in puppetry is that as long as a fish is not moving, there isn't that much, as long as an object is not moving, it's not alive, sorry. It's a very simple thing. So I wrote another processing sketch, which is running here, which just gets the joystick input, up, down, left, right, and it stores that in a variable, and it sends that variable over here. And so now I'm going to just add a UDP input over here and say I want to listen to, so I made channels. I want to listen to channel 4, which is just a specific port. And I'll get 2 variables, which are vectors. And I just happen to know that the vector, this first vector, is actually a location. And so I can connect the location of this fish with this first vector. And then I can start moving that fish around with the joystick. And so this is, I would say that it's always that easy. But this is the idea. Like, it would be that. And then I can teach even puppeteering students to write that software with the joystick. I can't teach them this. But if they can write these small pieces of software, they're not as scared to do that. And then they can do funny things and like move around and do like all of this sort of stuff. Yeah. And then you can also, wait, let me quickly move this around. No. And you can also say, let me press a key, and then I'm going to switch to a camera. Let's say I want to press the key 1. And then when I hit space and I press the key 1, I'm switching to a specific camera. And here you can see how I'm using all points and stuff. Yes, so the question that I have is that a good idea to use points? You think that it would be better to use standard vectors and polygons and stuff? It comes with a whole bunch of cool things that you can do, because you can just simply draw stuff. Like, you can just draw things down here. And then I wrote a screen space normal generating shader, so you don't have to generate normals while you draw, but it's actually in a screen space shader, so you'll do differences and they'll generate normals on the fly, and then it'll just do like the stuff. And I like this. I feel like this is kind of simple, but I don't know if this will get me in trouble at some point down the line. So if you're interested in like shader code and general visual stuff, I would love to talk to you. That would be very nice. Yeah, this is basically an overview of the stuff that I'm doing, the problems that I'm having, and the fields that I'm interested in and working in. And there's so many questions that are unanswered, like how do we get rid of flat screens in general when we start working with digital theater, like projection mapping stuff. The bathtub one was one of those experiments where I'm like, what else can we project on? And what else can we make reactive and tangible? And so if you have any ideas on how that sort of stuff works, or how you would be able to create stuff and show how you're doing it while you're doing it, I would be super interested in knowing how you approach that sort of stuff. So thank you very much for staying with me in this room for so. And you can see error messages over here. Whoever knows why. Yes. Yes.
The first demo-like productions that you showed.
Yes.
Which were like from 2005.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Did you know about the demo scene?
Yes. Yes. I know about the demo scene from the moment I put my first Amiga disc. Yeah. No. I knew that I knew there was this night demo for the Amiga with the book that opens up, and there's this amazing night coming up. And I know a whole bunch of, everything that was on cracked video games that I played was super nice. Yeah. No, I knew about it, and I met Eki in 2006, I think, for the first time at FMX. And I was just stoked and amazed that the demo scene was alive and kicking, and there was amazing stuff happening. Yeah, the idea was that basically people would come to FMX and fill the room for the demos, and then they would all leave. And then we would be like, hey, there's this video game stuff. Yeah, so that's how it works. Also, feel free, we could all, I would really like to go outside and smoke a cigarette. And you can, I guess, given the temperature in this room, we can all just, breathe. And then if you have questions, I'm here all night. and I'm going to have a good time. So, yeah, thank you very much. Cool. Yeah.